Is this thing on? I think it is. Had a little bit of technical difficulty to start the show, but we are back in a big way. So are the Buffalo Bills, 5-2, 2-game winning streak. They beat the Tennessee Titans here today, 34-10. After going to the locker room down 10-7, Ryan, they scored on all 5 second half possessions. It was really a display in the second half for both sides of the ball. We're going to get to all of that today on Shout at Buffalo Bills Football Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Matt. Maybe not as well as the Bills over those final 3 quarters, especially the second half. You said it. They came out flat as can be, 3 and outs on offense, defense giving up points. And we'll talk a little bit about what some of the defenders said post-game about why the Titans had some success early on. But it was all Bills after they started scoring their first touchdown and went from there.
You can right now head over to the Tops Red Zone. It's the rush to the Tops Red Zone right now. Get game day ready with Tops. Score big game day savings, winning recipes, and everything you need for the ultimate game day experience. Head to the Tops Red Zone in store for all your game day essentials and more. And I want to talk about like the offensive explosion that happened in the second half. I mean, we were looking at Josh Allen's stats in the first half. Yeah. It was not pretty. I mean, he went, I think at one point he had completed somewhere around 30 to 40% of his passes. And you're like, man, are we looking at another performance like a couple of weeks ago when it was just, which one was that where he finished with 30% completion rate? Was that against Houston?
No, was it Houston? Yeah, it was Houston where he was really struggling. I think he was trying to stretch the field a little bit too much in that game.
So, this one was a little bit different with the way that Joe Brady was calling this game early. I tweeted, I just didn't get it. I didn't get the almost, predictable manner at which the Bills were trying to run the football. I get being good at running the ball, and they should lean into that. But it just felt a little bit too much like even the Titans knew it was coming. Like we were sitting up in the press box, we knew it was coming, and I think that you saw them get out of that a little bit when Josh Allen kind of aired it out a couple of times. They had the turnover, they go down, they score the touchdown really quick. That was a big moment in the game. But Amari Cooper makes an immediate impact for this Buffalo Bills offense. I mean, he got here Wednesday. He was doing walkthroughs with assistant wide receivers coach DJ Magnus all week. They were really just trying to get him up to speed to a level to where he can go out and play at a fast level today. And he did. He scores a touchdown, the Bills' second touchdown today. I thought Cooper's arrival allowed everybody else to eat. So it's almost like Cooper needed to be here for them to finally realize what Brady's been preaching since the start of training camp.
Yeah, and, Cooper kind of had his welcome to Buffalo moment with his first pass from Josh Allen, which was a heater along the sidelines, bounced off the hands and off the chest. But from that point on, he was pretty much automatic for this offense, making obviously the touchdown catch on his second target, but making some great sideline grabs, being a big factor for this team. And like you said, it goes back to everyone eats. Once they were able to get him the ball, that's when you saw Keon Coleman making plays. Khalil Shakir come on and make a lot of plays for this offense. So it opened up a lot for this team, Dalton Kincaid as well. So this was the immediate impact that the Bills were looking for when they acquired him this week on Tuesday, and he delivered in his first game as a member of the Bills.
Back to Brady for a moment. Like, I think that this game, listen, you could kind of mess around and hang around with a team like this because, the Tennessee Titans, we watched this game, they're not very good. But I think a lesson that you have to learn if you're Joe Brady from this game is you need to be a little bit more unpredictable moving forward. I mean, the games are going to get harder. You're going on the road next week against a Seattle team that shut down that Atlanta offense today. Obviously, we'll wait to hear what's going on with DK Metcalf. He's carted off the field with a knee injury. Huge development for that game next week against the Seattle Seahawks. But you have Josh Allen. You have all of these weapons. There's got to be a way. Like, the easy button seems to be you send Khalil Shakir in motion. He gets out in space. You get the ball in his hands really quickly, and he tends to make plays. And we saw him carry them completely in a second half drive. When the Bills needed something in the first half, they went to Khalil Shakir as well, and it was 2 passes that ended up opening up the door to James Cook, who ran it in for a touchdown. We can get to the running backs in a minute, but what you think about what Brady has to do schematically moving forward to maybe make things a little bit easier on the Bills?
Well, I think he has to deliver some plays as well that lets Josh Allen take those layups. And that's not all on Joe Brady. I think that Josh Allen early in this game was pressing a little bit, trying to stretch the field a little bit more than what he should have. And for that reason, he was at 5 yards after the first quarter. He went on to throw for 318 over the last 3. Yeah. But that first quarter was rough for him. And it doesn't all fall on Joe Brady, but you have to really emphasize and bring home the fact that you take the layups, you take the gimmies that are given to you there. When it comes to the run game, you're right. They can be overly predictable. And early on, running into that middle of that Titans defense just wasn't working. They have some pretty good big men in the middle of that defense. So if you want to establish the run, go out to the outside a little bit, go away from those guys like Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat and company, and get a little bit more creative though with your play calling, because it wasn't great early on. But then Joe Brady, you could see him getting more comfortable in terms of calling the game, and then how efficient the Bills became because of that, going up and down the field.
So you have Amari Cooper, who gets involved early, obviously has the drop on the first series, and you're kind of wondering, like, okay, what's the story going to be after this game? A big issue for Amari Cooper in Cleveland this year. He's leading the NFL in drops at 9. His first target, he ends up with a drop. The rest of the game, he's targeted 4 times. He catches all 4 times, 4 targets. So that ends up not being the case. Question I saw in the chat here, though. How much did Cooper's arrival and presence on the field, how much did that lead to Keon Coleman's ability to have some success in this game? I got 2 things on that. First of all, L'Jarius Sneed wasn't playing today.
Right.
So that's a big piece of the puzzle. When you don't have an elite level cornerback out there, I feel like the wide receivers should have had a field day, which they did in the second half. The other piece of it is too, you have to focus on Amari Cooper. And when you come out and you're Cooper in your first game with this team, and you make a play like that early in the game, that all of a sudden makes the defense have to respect you even more, opens things up for everybody else. And you saw as they kind of went along in the game, everybody else kind of fall in line there.
Yeah, and you nailed the first part when it came to Sneed not being active. Sneed was questionable entering this game, but didn't practice all week. So once you saw him on that inactive list, you figured it was going to be a little bit easier for the wide receivers in this matchup. But we've talked about this. Adding Amari Cooper, who is a number 1 wide receiver, has been a number 1 wide receiver throughout his career, it's going to open up things for the rest of this offense. It's kind of what Stephon Diggs did here in the past. When you have a guy that defenses have to concentrate on, it frees things up for Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, and even the backs when they're coming out of the backfield. We saw Ty Johnson score receiving touchdown today. So it really does open up things for everyone else. And the fact he was able to do that coming here after just being with the team for a few days, it shows you how much dangerous this offense can be once he truly gets acclimated to this offense and knows the full playbook.
It's funny because we oftentimes in a game, especially one like this, where you're playing a lesser opponent, and I think a lot of fans were going into this one expecting them to roll. I mean, a lot of us in the media did. I mean, 30-15 was kind of the average, right? 35-15. I mean, a lot of people were expecting a blowout. So when that doesn't happen early in the game, a lot of people, maybe like get a little bit anxious, get a little bit uncomfortable, and you start to see some of the takes flying around. And then you look at this thing from a 30,000-foot view after the game, and you think about it. Mason Rudolph going in for Will Levis at the last second, I thought really uplifted this Titans team. They have a really good defense. They come out, they play really physical against the Bills front. They shut down the run game early. Mason Rudolph doesn't do anything spectacular, but he slowly moves the ball down the field, takes advantage of a Bills penalty, Taron Johnson, which would have been a field goal. They end up They end up scoring a touchdown. So I feel like when you look at the whole picture here, this is another example of a Sean McDermott coach team that adjusts really well in game. Bobby Babbitt got a little bit of credit too in the post-game press conference from Sean, talking about getting his coaching staff together, figuring out a way to come out in the second half. That defensive stop on the first possession of the second half, it was absolutely massive. What did I say up in the press box, actually? Why don't you reveal to everybody what I said when that was happening?
What are they doing? Why are they going for it? Something along those lines, which is what we were all thinking in that moment.
I said, this is by far the dumbest thing you can do in this spot. 3rd and short, you have not, or 4th and short, you have not been able to run the ball on this drive. And now all of a sudden you're going to try to run it again. You lose 3 yards. That was the game right there.
Right. And yeah, and at one point you're like, they're not going to run it. And then sure enough, they snap the ball and there it is. And
I thought they were trying to draw them off
sides. Yeah. It's one thing to do that when you have a weapon at quarterback, when you have a great back, but one, they're already limited in their run game with Spears out. I know Pollard was on this team and he's a solid back, but Mason Rudolph doesn't strike fear. You're going to play that run. You're going to crash down, and Dwayne Carter made a huge play there for this defense. And, the success that the Titans had early on, I cannot remember if it was Greg Rousseau or DeMar Hamlin said it post-game. They pretty much just said, though, that the Titans were in their bag of tricks early when it came to the quick passes, getting the way they were able to efficiently move the ball up and down the field. But then they said, but the thing about the bag of tricks is eventually they run out. And then you have to actually play your offense against the other team's defense. And once that started to happen, they had no answers for the Bills defense, and the defensive line started getting consistent pressure thanks to Greg Rousseau, 6 QB hits today. Unbelievable performance, by far his best performance since week 1 with this team. So, we'll get to this more, but I feel like Bobby Babich, once the game settles in, he's done a great job this year, really adjusting to what the offenses are doing and really locking them down for the most part.
And the other piece too, you mentioned Greg Rousseau, is like you have your 2 edge rushers with Von Miller out serving the rest of that suspension. You have your 2 young pass rushers that, one in Epinesa, you made a minor investment in bringing him back on a 2-year deal. You have Rousseau, who's coming up on a contract. I'm not going to overreact to the performance today from Rousseau, only because it's against what I think is a very low-level offensive line, and they had a turnstile in there at the right tackle spot. They started with I can't even remember his name now, because I was going through 3 different names. Watson. What was the other guy's name? I can't remember the other guy's name.
Petit.
Yeah, I think it's Petit Friere. But either way, flip them around. Neither one of them had any answers for Greg Rousseau. And so you want to see that. You want to see in a game like this, your former first-round pick dominate. But A.J. Epinesa, another sack today. Yeah. Strip sack. That's now what could be 4 in 2 weeks. When A.J. Epinesa gets into a groove, when he's healthy, I feel like he's in a really good spot. He's going to be tested next week. It's not a great Seattle offensive line, but it's better than this one, especially on the edges. But if he could still continue to develop this momentum, that's a huge sign for the Bills as they kind of wait for Von Miller to get back.
And we've talked about this. When he gets on these runs, these hot streaks, so to speak, it usually goes for 4 or 5 games. And last year he was on a heater before that Kansas City game. He made a big play in that one, and then he suffers the rib injury. And when things like that happen, when he comes back, it seems like he's a little bit slow to get back into it. But he was a factor again today. Like you said, has a sack, gets some pressures there. Great performance off the edges by both of those young players. I feel like DaQuan Jones, one of his better games of the season today. So maybe with veterans, in the case of Jones and other players, maybe it does take them a little bit longer once they're older to get back into the groove of things. But I am starting to see some signs of life there on the interior. And we already mentioned the big play from Dwayne Carter. So once the D-line started winning up front, that really helped in the middle and in the back of that defense. And obviously another great game from Terrell Bernard and company.
You think about the Bills bringing in Amari Cooper, and you think about a couple of years here that we've spent at various times talking about DeAndre Hopkins as a possible trade target for the Bills. It's unbelievable to me. We talked a little bit about it on the show last night, how ineffective this wide receiver trio has been for Tennessee. And I know that they don't have great quarterback play. I get all of that. But DeAndre Hopkins looks like he might be a bit cooked. Like he struggled today to get any kind of consistent separation. He had 1 catch during the game. He was a non-factor in this game.
And I believe it was an MCL that he's dealing with, MCL sprain or something like that. And I think that's still hampering his play, and he's gutting through it, which kudos to him, especially on a team that's going nowhere fast. But it's not just DeAndre Hopkins. Kelvin Ridley, huge investment, and that has not come close to paying off for this team. They have a solid 1 through 3. Tyler Boyd thrown in, obviously, as that third receiver, and they're not getting much out of it. The quarterback play is a big factor in that, obviously, but very underwhelming trio thus far this season.
Shout out to our guy, Jim Payne, member here on YouTube, and also a Shout Buffalo Bills insider. And you could become an insider right now by texting 716-528-6727 or go to joinsubtext.com/shoutbuffalobills. Ryan was on the text line all game long today. I'll be hitting you with a few things later tonight and into tomorrow. The Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give them a call, 716. Oh, I forgot the number. I almost did it, Ryan.
I was just sitting here saying, man, he is nailing this. There's nothing on screen. He is just rattling it off. I was very impressed. I'm still impressed.
Absolutely disappointed with myself on every level. I had it going. It was amazing. I wasn't going to bring up the read. I didn't want to have to do it, but I'm going to bring it up. Call 716-852-1234 or check out litrolaw.com. All right, Ryan, where do you want to go next, buddy?
Yeah, let's go a little bit into the play of the tight ends. I thought that this was another really good Dalton Kincaid game. Made a great play along the sideline on half to have it down Josh Allen layered that ball in, a brilliant pass as well. But you're starting to see Kincaid show some signs of life, and it goes back to our original talking point with Amari Cooper and his importance to this team. But what did you think of Kincaid's performance today for the Bills?
It was good. I looked at his stat line early on, and I think at one point it was 5 targets for 2 catches, and you're like, man, all right, Amari's in the mix now. You have Dalton Kincaid as kind of the secondary, third tier option in the passing game, potentially, like with defense is not able to focus in as much on him, and it just wasn't clicking early on. But once the offense started to get into a little bit of a rhythm, that's when you see Kincaid start to get involved. You see the short passing game where he makes a catch, turns upfield, gets going a little bit. And then to your point, that pass on the sideline, it ends up setting up a touchdown. It was a huge play. They reviewed it. It ends up holding up. He fumbled out of bounds. It was kind of a weird explanation there.
For the Titans, but it wasn't at the same time because the completion stood. But because the fumble went out of bounds forward, they were technically correct to challenge the play. One of the more bizarre challenges I can ever remember. And the whole thing about the challenge flag was in the air before Josh Allen called or snapped the ball, which there's actually an NFL rule that says that the flag has to be on the ground. So that's kind of interesting that they allowed it to stand in that matter.
So you're calling BS, are you?
You know I am.
I like it when you do that. All right. Here's the thing about Kincaid, too. With Amari Cooper here, I think it downshifts the pressure on Kincaid, a former first-round pick, right? But is that a good thing that in year 2 for Dalton Kincaid, you need that if you're the Bills, that somebody to take some of the pressure off him? Didn't you feel like when they drafted him, you were hoping that he was going to develop into a guy that can take the defense's attention and still produce despite all of the attention? That's not typically done by tight ends. Like, I mean, right. Travis Kelce is kind of one-on-one. And I think going back to the draft, that might have been one of the downfalls of using that comparison, because Kelce, there's really nobody else in the league like him. George Kittle, even for as good as he's been, he kind of goes in spurts, and he's benefited a lot from the supporting cast that he's had there as well.
Yeah, and you look at the outstanding year that Sam Laporta had last year, for instance, and he has not been able to back that up this year. So you're right. The tight end position is very difficult. But to go back to your question, is it a good thing that they brought in Cooper to take some of that attention away? Yeah, absolutely, because it goes back to something you said a few months ago or a few episodes ago, Matt. When the Bills traded Stephon Diggs, that put Dalton Kincaid into the limelight of being their number 1 target. And I just don't know if he's ready for that type of role yet in year 2. I think he's as talented as they come. I think that he can catch the ball all over the field. He's not necessarily being utilized at the best of his abilities right now in terms of downfield, because I still think that's an area where he can thrive. But when, you made this comparison a few episodes ago, when the Chiefs traded away Tyreek Hill, they could do that because they knew Travis Kelce could step into that number 1 role. I think the Bills were hopeful that Kincaid could do that, but it's so tough for that position for a young kid like this. I think having Cooper this year, if they eventually extend him, it'll help him out a lot. But eventually, I could see this being an opportunity where he can run the show. It's just not at this point in time.
All right, so Jim Payne with the super chat, one of our insiders. Shout out to him, and shout out to everybody that came out to Wingnuts last night. By the way, like before we go any further, we told everybody we were kind of shooting some marketing material. So we did a little bit of a hype video right before we started the show. Wait till you see this. We're going to play this on an episode in the next couple of weeks once it's done. It was so cool. We got some big plans for November, December. We're coming back to Turning Stone Resort Casino. We cannot wait for that. That's November 30th. Get that in your calendar out there in Verona, New York, inside the New York Rec and Social Club. That's going to be awesome. But Jim asks, just got in, what are you loving about their play overall, and what concerns do you have? We talked a lot about what we've loved so far. Where's your level of concern? I think one level of concern is the inability of Terrell Bernard to stay healthy. I mean, he gets banged up again in this game twice, leaves the game to get his head looked at after a possible concussion, cleared to return, comes back in the game, suffers an ankle injury, leaves the game, is deemed out of the game. He actually comes back on the sideline with his helmet on at one point. Like, wait a second, is Bernard coming back in this game? He's already ruled out. So going forward, how big of a concern is this for you? Because for me, it's a big one. I think that there's going to be a significant drop-off to Bale Inspector over a long period of time. I know you kind of have Matt Milano lingering out there, but it's not a apples for apples. You're not going to be able to move Dorian Williams over to the middle linebacker spot, or maybe you could. I don't know. Like they were toying around with the idea last year. I'm worried about this defense if Terrell Bernard were to miss a significant chunk, or if anything happens that removes him from the situation in big games in December and January.
Yeah, I think your level of concern would have to be almost off the charts. He's that important to this defense, and in a day and age where linebackers aren't necessarily that important to a defensive unit, he is for the Bills. And you've seen the last 2 weeks with his play, and he's the one that set up the turnover on downs where Dwayne Carter came in and made that tackle for a loss of 3 because he came in on the third down play and set it up. So he makes plays week in, week out. You do worry, though, about the injuries because you mentioned the drop-off. There's just not anyone that can play at that type of level. So if that is the case, yeah, I'm certainly concerned. But I'm going to say one more positive, Matt, the run game for this Bills team, and specifically the running backs, maybe not just the run game. All 3 scored a touchdown today. You had James Cook open up the scoring with a touchdown run. You had Ray Davis end the game with a touchdown run. And then you had Ty Johnson wedged in between there with a touchdown reception. So when you have backs that can score, it's going to help this passing game as well. So there's one more positive for me is the running backs on this team are all contributing in their own way, more than I can ever remember under a Sean McDermott regime that you're getting things from 1, 2, and 3 at that position.
Speaking of Sean McDermott, ultimate Sean McDermott move to not start Amari Cooper, but then send him out on the second play and have him play a huge chunk of plays throughout the course of the game. I don't know if it was gamesmanship. I don't know if it was just Sean McDermott being Sean McDermott. And I know a lot of fans just get so frustrated with it, and I get it. The other thing about this team is that they're very strange about some things, like James Cook, for instance, right? For a while, like as he was drafted and sitting behind Devin Singletary for a year. And then when he became the back last year, but at times it still didn't feel like they were fully investing in him as the starter. You go out and you spend a 4th-round draft pick in Ray Davis. You come out today and it seems like you're still like, now you're flipped a little bit and you're forcing James Cook at times, especially early in the game, when I would have liked to have seen a little bit more Ray Davis sooner. Is there a way that this team can implement both of these runners in more of a tag team role as opposed to this, all right, we're going to go with Cook for a while, and then we'll come with Ray Davis in the second half?
I'm going to give the coaching staff the benefit of the doubt in this game because Ray Davis was on the injury report. He was questionable in this game. Maybe they were trying to limit his pitch count a little bit in terms of his usage. But then late in the game when they, were trying to really end it with a 4-minute drive, he does score the touchdown. He had a 22-yard run earlier in the second half where he showed off the physicality. So you feel good about him health-wise now heading into this week against Seattle. But that's my only hope. But in terms of what they need to do, it doesn't have to be a 50-50 split, but maybe 2 series on for Cook, 1 series then for Davis. You want to get him more involved because their running styles are so different, and find ways to get them both on the field sometimes or in the same series, because that will make life more difficult for defenses as well. As physical as Ray Davis is, he can also catch the ball out of the backfield. He can do a little bit of everything. And James Cook, we've seen that when he's fresh, he can rip off big runs and make some big plays in the passing game as well.
So we got Josh Allen here sitting 7 games into the season without throwing a single interception. He adds a couple more touchdowns to the total in this game, and on a day where CJ Stroud had been gaining some ground on him in the MVP chase over the last couple of weeks. He throws up an absolute stinker as they lose on the road to the Green Bay Packers. Where do things stand for you right now with Josh Allen? He's still wearing the glove, which tells you that not 100% with that injury yet. Although there might be I'll ask him about this week. I wonder how much that is a familiarity of it now, because he's played with it for so many weeks in a row. Maybe just keeping it on as he kind of goes along, and maybe he'll work it out at some point. But where are you at with Josh Allen and what you've seen over the last couple of games, and then heading into this Seattle-Miami run before their old buddies come back to town?
Yeah, I feel like Josh Allen's playing really good ball the last 2 weeks. The way that he has been throwing it, especially, I know the first quarter was very bad for Josh Allen today in terms of his overall performance. But once he started going, he was connecting. He was layering in great passes. I already talked about the Kincaid one that set up a touchdown. That same drive he threw into Amari Cooper that was impressive in terms of getting it by some defenders along the way there. So the confidence in the arm is there. He hasn't been running as much, it feels like, using the legs. He obviously sealed the Jets game with a short run in that matchup, but hasn't had to use the legs as much. I want to see that become more of the game plan, whether it's called plays or whether it's just him when there's nothing there taking off, because that's another thing that makes defenses a little bit nervous once he shows off the scrambling ability. But overall, if you were to tell me that through 7 games he would have no interceptions and the Bills would be sitting at 5-2, it'd be hard to turn that down. And I think most fans would take that at this point. Finishing with over 300 passing yards today after such a slow start too, it just shows you how great he is once he turns things on and gets things figured out.
Today felt like, it wasn't a huge Ed Oliver game, but I think what getting him back in the lineup does allows you to kind of focus in a little bit more on Dwayne Carter and the snaps that he does get and see him pop a little bit more. Like, it's a big difference from having to play the snap count that Ed Oliver does to playing in a backup role and not having to be out there as much. I thought Carter obviously had the big impact play to come up with the stop on 4th down, but I thought throughout the game had a couple of really nice moments, especially in run support. Tony Pollard, I know it was helpful for the Bills. We mentioned not having Snead, not having Tajay Sharp was a big deal in this game as well. They had to rely on Tony Pollard, who ended up going for 61 on about 15 carries in this game. I thought he was good. And again, all right, Rasul Douglas, he's about as close as it gets to finally coming away from those interceptions.
Yeah.
He dropped what I thought was 2 today. That pass interference call on Douglas was absolutely egregious.
I don't know what they saw because I haven't watched the television broadcast. I didn't see anything, at least in the video that they shared on that given play, because sometimes you see a player like grab a jersey to kind of slingshot themselves in front. I didn't see that unless they just didn't show that on TV. That just really a bad call. But yeah, he had that. He had one that he kind of made a diving play for, got his hands on, just couldn't come up with it. And in that mic'd up segment from Monday Night Football too, he really thought he had one, was going to get one against Aaron Rodgers. So he's there. He's on the cusp of it. Maybe this upcoming week against Geno Smith and company is the week that it finally happens. But he's been playing great football, and as long as he plays at a high level, interceptions or not, it's going to be tough to move the ball down the field on this pass defense.
It is absolutely threat level midnight in Miami right now. They lose again today. They drop to what I believe is, are they 2-5 now?
2-5, yeah.
So Miami loses today. The Patriots were absolutely horrible this morning. So much so that their head coach came out and said we're a soft football team right now. The Jets play tonight on Sunday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Very tough matchup. Are they on the road for that game, or is that in New York?
That I feel like, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure.
I got it right here. Don't worry about it. I got you in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So, I mean, we could be sitting here, at the end of tonight with the Bills in an absolutely phenomenal spot in the division. Even if the Jets win, they're still in a really good spot in the division. Here's the thing with Miami. We're talking a little bit about this last night. Tua is going to start to ramp things up, maybe return to practice next week. Do you hold him out if you're the Miami Dolphins until after the Bills game? The problem is their season might be over by then, but we know the history between Tua and the Bills, the physicality that this front ends up usually having success against him, the amount of hits that he takes. And also, do you wonder if he's going to wear the Guardian cap when he comes back? You see Taylor Rapp flying around out there with it. You see some players around the league starting to really, test this thing out. I think he should.
Yeah, it would be absolutely embarrassing if he doesn't wear the Guardian cap. This is a player that, I don't know why he hasn't worn it in the past, but if he wants to stay on this football field and continue to play football, why wouldn't you take every possible avenue to protect yourself? The Guardian cap, I don't know how that Q collar works that Dalton Kincaid wears, if it would have the same effect for the quarterback position, but I would explore any and every avenue possible to protect himself. It does sound like he's going to play this upcoming week, and then obviously the next week against Buffalo. They need to go on a big run. They need the Bills to sputter a little bit to get back into this race, because not only are they 2-5, they already have a head-to-head loss to Buffalo. Looking back on, you don't want to say looking back, but when you look back on this season for the Miami Dolphins, with high expectations, high as can be, you're going to have to sit and wonder about if they did enough at that backup quarterback position, because they've had so many injuries there. Skylar Thompson, then they bring in Snoop Huntley. He gets injured today. And then it's Tim Boyle, who, how does Tim Boyle keep getting jobs in this league? I have no idea. He was not good in college. He's not good in the pros. Just blows my mind. So they can't they don't have that ability to sit him these next few weeks. They have to get him out there, and he sounds like he wants to be out there, but they're going to have to go on quite the run to even salvage this season.
I really like two final thoughts on this Bills offense before we get out of here. For me, final thought, if you will, Khalil Shakir. We can't talk about him enough. Like, he's such a consistent part of this offense, even when the stats don't jump off the page at you. You know, he looked healthier tonight, which I think is a huge development as he kind of comes back from that high ankle sprain. So important to them just moving the ball, critical plays over and over. But again, the reliability. I really like Ty Johnson in that third down running back role where he kind of turns into a pass catcher in a lot of ways. Another touchdown this week. He's made a bunch of plays over he had the touchdown a couple weeks ago. He had that big play down the sideline against the Miami Dolphins, if you remember, when Josh Allen was running towards the sideline. So it's funny. We've come full circle, Ryan. And a week when we were talking about the everyone eats mantra, maybe potentially being an early season failure because they had to go out and they had to bring in Amari Cooper. Maybe it's they had to go out and get Amari Cooper to really lean into everybody eats. And we kind of saw that play out today with the distribution and the success across the stat line.
And Amari Cooper, the personality, you already know he's a selfless player. He's not going to be barking for the ball, demanding the ball. So that definitely helps with that everyone eats mentality. But Khalil Shakir, 7 catches, 7 targets today. I think it's 27 receptions on 28 targets. I mean, that just shows you how automatic this guy is in this offense for Josh Allen. Allen said that Shakir's ankle still isn't quite 100%, but he looked way more comfortable out there today than he did against the Jets on Monday Night Football, where it seemed like he was really just kind of gutting it out and playing through that. So they're trending in a great direction there. Run game's performing great 1 through 3. And this offensive line continues to impress. This is the best offensive line this team has had. And I feel like teams that win the Super Bowl, teams that make runs in the playoffs, you need to have a good offensive line. The Bills certainly do.
Great stuff, Ryan Talbot. You're bringing it as always. We're here at Highmark Stadium. The Bills improved to 5-2 on the heels of a 34-10 win over the Tennessee Titans. And we are brought to you on Shout by Tops Friendly Markets. Head over to topsfriendlymarkets.com right now. They'll get you hooked up for game day. They got deals going on every Sunday. You're hosting a party for Monday Night Football. Whatever you want to do, head over to Tops Friendly Markets. And you know this guy, every Sunday morning before a big game in Olean, he finds a Tops, gets himself a Tops breakfast pizza, gets after it.
Gets after it. The best breakfast pizza out there. Go to Tops, get some pizza, get some gas points. 80 cents off, Matt. I already told you I'm pumped. I'm filling up the tank when I get back to Olean here.
Did you get that? 80 cents off, did you say?
Oh, yeah.
And you're pumped.
Oh, I didn't even mean
You didn't even mean that.
Didn't even mean it.
All right. That's going to do it. For Ryan, I'm Matt. We'll see you this week, everybody. Enjoy this one. Take care. Have a good Sunday.